Here is some of the key points of the social commentary presented by The Matrix Resurrections. If you haven't seen the movie, I'd recommend watching it. Maybe I'll do like a little review a bit at the end. But if you're a fan of the series and whatnot, like, yeah, don't watch this before before you watch the actual movie. Spoiler alert. Okay. Here we go. Number one, super quick. It's just a light satire of the tech bro industry, all the stuff from like Silicon Valley. There's a lot of light ribbing when they show the structure and the employees of the game company. Not a lot to say on that. I think they're just really having fun with it. Nothing too crazy there. But the first really big piece of commentary that comes out, I think, is when Bugs is talking about when they were first freed from the Matrix. They explained the process of how, the person that was invading the Matrix to set them free gave them this binary choice, red pill, blue pill, and they started arguing with them about how they couldn't distill their entire identity down to a binary choice and how ridiculous that was, and how them and, the original person trying to set them free had a good laugh about it because that wasn't really the point. It was just about the illusion of choice. And that was a really cool commentary, I think, just on the idea of gender and how it doesn't have to be this binary set thing, one or the other. I thought that was a pretty cool piece. Okay, this next piece of social commentary is actually on abortion. So warning about that. But basically, Trinity is still trapped in the Matrix, and they're trying to figure out if she can basically be reborn, if she can experience life again for herself out into the real world. And Neo is outside the pod, and they're asking, Neo's asking, well, what do I do now? What can he do? And one of the crew members specifically says that the biggest choice of Neo's life right now is not his choice to make. I mean, that seems pretty on the nose, right? So now we're getting closer towards the end of the movie. This next piece takes place during what I would say like the climax, some of the big fight scenes. And they definitely adjusted the visuals to represent more of what oppression looks like today. The original Matrix, they showed an oppressed society by people being tracked by the FBI and, always being monitored, which is terrible. But as we've seen in the last couple of years, it's gotten way worse now, where now we're literally being oppressed in the streets with the literal military crowding groups of protesters and tear gassing them and whatnot. And so there is very much a visual metaphor by having an entire sea of SWAT and military folks in a civilian destination. That was very much on the nose. And to kind of push it even further, there's a point where they're running from the mob and everyone in swarm mode, and they start to control the direction of where Neo and Trinity are going on their bike and where the rest of the crew is going in their SUV. They specifically say that they're guiding them into what they called a kill zone. And that's really not far from what we've seen happen repeatedly over the past several years with protest. Police do what's called kettling. And that's basically a practice where they sort of push protesters into an area where they can box them in, usually either up against a wall or even, unfortunately, in Providence, we had seen they'd push people into dangerous intersections, specifically to have an excuse to then brutalize people and arrest them. That's a thing that happens in real life, unfortunately, all the time now in America. And so the fact that they addressed that in the movie when Neo and Trinity got pushed into a kill zone, when they're already using these visual metaphors for what we see happening around us, is pretty astounding. I thought that was a cool piece of commentary. Okay, getting towards the end here, and one of the final scenes when Trinity is beating up Neil Patrick Harris just basically for fun. One of the times she slams him into the wall and she goes, "That's for using children." And I thought that was a really cool piece of commentary. Because if you think like, all right, the agents and the programs, they sort of, they represent society and the way that we are manipulated and controlled. And in this case, they used children as a way to control Trinity. And that's obviously a big issue for women, like the idea of society trying to discredit certain women for not choosing to have children. And it's a huge pressure for them. That's a societal construct that shouldn't exist. And so I thought that was a cool ribbing in that way. And the very last piece, this one was pretty on the nose, and I don't think it's very deep. But to end with Rage Against the Machine song, obviously a throwback to the ending of the first movie. But there's a twist. This isn't typical Rage Against the Machine. This is a cover of a Rage Against the Machine song. The vocalist, it sounds to me like the vocalist is swapped out with someone who is either a woman or just not male identified. And I thought that was really cool, like just a different voice in there. Like, oh, okay, that was kind of a cool tongue-in-cheek piece that they put in there. Again, not very deep. It's just sort of a cute thing. So is it commentary? I don't know. I don't necessarily think the song selection is commentary. It's just cute Easter egg. The song that they chose specifically talks about the death of Malcolm X, and I thought that was really refreshing, speaking that truth in what is basically a giant, big budget film. So that was refreshing. So if you're curious about my actual thoughts about the movie, I started to talk about a review here, and I cut it just because there's so much more I want to say. There's so much to cover. So I'll just make that a separate video. So hit subscribe if you want to catch when that happens at some point the next couple of days. I hope that your holiday is good and whatnot, and everyone gets access to testing. And yeah, take care.